You're standing by a loud concrete highway in Yellowstone National Park. It's 2007. Cars are rushing past. And right next to the asphalt, a 1,000-pound wild moose is intentionally giving birth. She isn't lost. She's using you. In the deep woods, grizzly bears are waiting to hunt her calf. But grizzly bears are terrified of asphalt. And they're terrified of us. This moose knows it. African wild dogs are also deliberately running into human settlements to hide from lions. A 30-year analysis proves this is a global phenomenon. Lemurs, prairie dogs, and elk are abandoning millions of years of evolutionary instinct to drop their babies at our feet. Because here's the thing, the deadliest apex predator in history is currently being manipulated into running a wilderness daycare. Let's start with the highway. For millions of years, the absolute iron law of giving birth in the wild was silence. You hide. You stay out of sight. Because if you don't, your newborn is dead in minutes. But in 2007, biologist Joel Berger tracked pregnant moose in Yellowstone and found the exact opposite. Non-pregnant moose stayed deep in the forest, but pregnant ones actively migrated toward the loudest, most human-dense areas they could find. They used traffic as a biological shield. Think about what that costs her. Every instinct she owns is screaming at her to hide, and she overrules all of them. The logic is simple. Grizzly bears eat moose calves, but grizzly bears hate cars. So the moose trade the quiet of the wild for the chaos of the road, placing their newborns feet from roaring engines just to keep them away from bears. A logging truck is loud. A grizzly is final. She takes the truck. To understand how radical this is, look at what animals do when humans aren't around. In 2024, researchers Michael Mothersbaugh and David Jakowski tracked white-tailed deer. To protect fawns from coyotes, mothers use the maternal dispersion hypothesis. It works. It's also slow and exhausting and lonely. They give birth, hide the baby, then deliberately walk miles away, leaving complex scent trails to drag coyotes in the wrong direction. She turns herself into a decoy for her own child. It is an exhausting game of biological chess, and she plays it on no sleep, days after giving birth. But when human infrastructure is available, that entire game goes out the window, and the evidence is genuinely insane. In 2026, researchers Sean D'Souza, Kartik Shankar, and Maria Faker published a massive meta-analysis. They looked at 44 studies spanning 30 years. They found that prairie dogs, mice, and lemurs don't just use human spaces. They actively drop their vigilance. Not a little, measurably. Vigilance is the scientific term for how intensely an animal looks over its shoulder. It's the tax every prey animal pays, every minute for its whole life. Near human roads, these prey animals literally relax. They stop scanning. They eat more. They treat our loudest spaces as a sanctuary. The most dangerous animal on the planet becomes the safest place to stand. Now, some of you are thinking, but humans are hunters too, so why wouldn't they run from us? Fair question, and the answer comes from a strict mathematical rule. In 2025, researcher Caitlin Gaynor analyzed this phenomenon, officially called the human shield hypothesis. For an animal to use you as a shield, two things must be true. First, the threat from their natural predator has to be extremely high. Second, the natural predator has to be even more terrified of humans than the prey is. Both things have to be true at the same time. High enough danger and a predator even more scared of us than the prey. Miss either one, and the whole strategy backfires. It's a calculated bet, and the math has to be exactly right, or it gets the baby killed. The moose knows humans are dangerous, but she knows the grizzly is even more scared of us. The prey weaponizes the predator's fear. They don't fight the lion, they hide behind the thing the lion is scared of. And this isn't just happening with herbivores. African wild dogs share their habitat with lions, and lions kill wild dogs. When lion pressure gets too high, wild dogs actively run into heavily settled human areas, toward the campfires, toward the roads, toward us. They are terrified of us, but they know lions will not follow them into human territory. They pick the lesser of two evils. For a wild dog, we are the lesser evil. That's not a compliment. This sounds simple. It isn't, because this strategy requires a wild animal to do something biologists thought was impossible. It requires them to read our minds, not our faces, our intentions. Think about it. If you're an elk, a human is the most unpredictable creature on Earth. One day, a human throws an apple core out a car window. The next day, a human shoots you with a rifle. To survive using the human shield hypothesis, you have to tell the difference. And somehow they can. Elk actually perform dynamic risk assessments on humans in real time. When hunters are actively in the woods, elk stress levels spike. Their vigilance skyrockets. They stop eating, they stop resting, they just watch. But when harmless tourists walk through the exact same area, the elk just keep eating. They completely ignore them. No panic, no flight. Barely a glance. They are profiling us. The hiker with a sandwich and the hunter with a rifle look identical. The elk tell them apart anyway. Researchers in Norway found the exact same behavior in moose. In regions where humans hunt them, moose avoid human buildings like the plague. There, a house means a gun. But the second you cross into a hunting-free zone, the moose lose their fear. They walk right up to human infrastructure. There, the exact same house means safety. They know exactly when we are a threat and when we are a shield. Same trail, same species. Completely different math depending on the month. They are actively mapping our laws, our hunting seasons, and our intentions, and then using that data to keep their babies alive. And this profiling goes even further when you look at cities. You might think an animal in a city is just trapped, desperately trying to survive in our concrete grid. But that assumption turned out to be wrong. Very wrong. Look at wild boars. In 2026, researchers found that boars actively reshape their entire spatial logic to fit human environments. In pristine forests, boars claim massive, sprawling territories. But in urban spaces, they shrink their home ranges dramatically. They pack themselves into small pockets of green space. Yet within those tight urban borders, they move over incredibly long distances, navigating a maze of streets, fences, and buildings. They map our alleys, our schedules, and our blind spots. When the bins go out, when the street goes quiet, when the humans go to sleep. They are highly flexible, actively using human architecture to shield their families from wild predators, while completely avoiding our direct attention. They treat the city not as a trap, but as a complex defensive bunker. Concrete and noise on the outside, their family on the inside. But the most fascinating evidence comes from what happens when this system fails. The human shield is not a perfect sanctuary. It is an evolutionary tightrope, and sometimes it snaps. And when it snaps fast. Researchers Caitlin Gaynor and Sean D'Souza highlight a massive risk in this behavior. Biologists call this an ecological trap, because when an elk or a moose dynamically adjusts its fear based on human behavior, it is making a deadly gamble. By intentionally dropping their vigilance to graze near a highway, or by ignoring the scent of a human because they assume it is just a tourist, they lose critical milliseconds of reaction time. The animal relies on human consistency. It bets its baby's life on us being predictable. But humans are anything but consistent. We change the rules overnight and never tell them. If the rules suddenly change, if a car swerves off the asphalt, if a new building project brings heavy machinery, or if a hunting season opens overnight, that shield becomes a meat grinder. The danger from the human suddenly outweighs the protection from the predator. And the animal finds that out the exact moment it's too late to matter. It is a highly unstable system. The very thing keeping the baby moose alive today could easily kill it tomorrow. Same road, same spot, opposite ending. And yet, despite the risk, the phenomenon is only accelerating. They keep coming. Every year, more of them, not fewer. They keep dropping their babies near our loud highways, hiding in our suburbs, and sleeping near our roads, in the one place their ancestors would have called suicide. Which brings us back to you, standing on the edge of the asphalt in Yellowstone. Modern psychology has a term for how we view these spaces. We call them unnatural. You look at a roaring highway and see a scar on the landscape. You see a loud, polluted, artificial line that destroys the natural world. You see the worst thing humans ever did to a forest. But the pregnant moose does not see a scar. She sees a fortress. Walls built out of speed and noise, patrolled by the only thing her predators fear. For 300,000 years, human beings were just another fragile species, terrified of the dark. You were prey. For most of that time, you weren't the hunter. You were the hunted. You spent millennia running from lions, hiding from bears, and staring out of caves, hoping the monsters would not find you. You were constantly scanning the horizon. Every shadow was a maybe. Every sound was a question. So you changed the rules, slowly, over thousands of years, but completely completely. You built fires to push back the dark. You built spears. You built cities, walls, and incredibly loud machines. You got so good at being frightening that you forgot you were ever afraid. You spent your entire evolutionary history trying to become the most terrifying thing in the woods, so you could finally stop being afraid. And you succeeded completely. More than any animal in the history of the planet. You succeeded so completely that the apex predators of the world are now terrified of your roads. But what nobody expected was what the other prey animals would do. They watched you build your walls. They watched the lions and the bears back away from your fire. The things that used to hunt you now keep their distance from your headlights. And they realized that standing right next to the monster was the safest place on Earth. So they moved in. You sleep in a house with locked doors and assume nature is something outside. But to them, you are nature. You are the ultimate apex predator, radiating so much intimidation that just standing near you guarantees survival. You don't even have to do anything. You just have to be close. You did not just conquer the wild. You did something far stranger than that. You became its biggest bodyguard. When a terrified animal brings its newborn to your feet, it is not a mistake. It is not surrendering. It is hiring you.